Oke, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Abdul Aziz, and now I would like to a presentation about the chapter 6. The chapter 6 is teacher, teaching, learning, and power. So, this chapter will written by Karen Amundsen, and then the subchapter of this presentation is number one, power and language, and number two is language with parents, and number three is transferring tools, and number four is the power of the briefing, and the last is talking with colleges. So let's see what is the author's qualifications from this writer. He working in the school district where the literacy lab was being held. He spent the previous 3 years as a teacher's aide in a special education classroom at a middle school, approximately 1 mile away from the lab school. And now, why is the author writing the books? As Becky, my lab's instruction, explained the content and structure of the literacy lab. I believe we all thought we have a fairly good idea of what we were in for in the 6 weeks that would follow. I did not realize how much I still had no unravel concerning the issues of teacher and student interaction. Issues involving language and power that become more pronounced when a culture differences are included. Issues that held the potential to break down or build a relationship. So, what are important issues? Some of the key events, dates, places that are found in the book. I didn't really how much I still had to unravel concerning the issue of teacher and student interaction. Issues involving language and power that become more pronounced when cultural differences are included. Issues that have the potential to break down or build a relationship. What is the main argument of or thesis of the book? How is the argument developed by the author in the book? So number one is power and language. Part of what we tried to do in the lab was arrange the learning so that he relationship centered on caring and trust rather than on control and power. At the same time, we tried to deal with power in other ways. So you guys can see from my slide, number one is power and language, and then number two is language with parents. The carry-forward of no jargon to classroom seems a natural and necessary transition. Working with first and second grades, all language need to be very explicit. Jargon would not have been useful in my goal to accelerate my students as readers and writers because I use explicit language with them. It makes sense to use the same language when I talk to their parents. Using a shared explicit language helps to avoid confusion and reinforce good practice. So I have to analyze this capture because the main argument from this capture. So number three is transferring tools. The point of transferring tool is I wonder whether asking students to read critically means confronting them with everyday experiences of social justice, which will mean confronting what it means to be white. I wonder what their parents will think about their children having to confront the village. I revoked what I learned in the literacy lab to suit the context of suburban schools. And the next is the power of the briefing. So I have to main idea in this point is, however, even on a day that was less than pleasant, if I had not taken a moment to unravel the interaction that took place, I would not to have known what to do or not to do. And next is in this debriefing season, I use the language of my instructor to talk to myself and answer my aunt's question. So all of this main argument or thesis will be explained in the book of the in this chapter. And the last is talking with colleges. As others, including me, began to see that no one judges three risk takers, we all began to share. This sharing allowed us to learn from other mistakes and breakthroughs. You guys can see to this slide, you can read it. And the next is word or other theory from other author to support the argument. So now we have to see the support of argument from the beginning of my explanation. I learned from my experience in the reading program that language is central to teaching and learning how to read. Language and power are part of literacy interaction through the linguistic choice of the teachers. The language of the child in accessing the written code and the unstated assumption in each layer of language. And the next is language with parents. Peter Johnson was my instructor for the prerequisite course to the literacy lab. He made an important point about language and power that has never left my mind. He explained that people sometimes use jargon to make themselves feel smart and to make others feel stupid. And the next is transferring tools. You guys can read it from my slide. I have to say that this was not same great epiphany I had as I stared at the shelf full of books with a cover lacking in at the diversity. And the next is the power of the debriefing. You guys can see this slide again. My principal has called me in to say that before we could finalize the schedule, we would have to make adjustment. So that's all my time could be accounted for, since I had a scheduled 10-minute lapse between each class for debriefing time. And the last is talking with colleges. Now, I often hear the language that Becky and Lisa, my course instructor, use in the lab to help me explore my practice, some coming from my lips as I talk to colleges about their practice. You guys can see this on my slide. And now, what evidence or proof or example to support the argument? Now again, we have to support the argument in the first explanation. And the power and language. For example, the teacher is normally seen as the more knowledgeable others in the learning situation within an asymmetrical power relationship. Sorry. And next is language with parents. I was reminded of this again in my classroom during a parents' night when I was speaking with a couple about having their child reader easier. You guys can see on my slide. And the next is transferring tools. You guys can read it and see it on my slide again. And the power of debriefing. And talking with colleges, you guys can read again on my screen. And now, what facts and evidence that the author has neglected to consider? So, you guys can read again from my screen because a lot of my explanation will be explained in this slide. And what are the weakness and strengths of the book? So in the strengths is by understanding the power and language, we can communicate more easily with the same language and easy to understand. Number two is by understanding the language with parents, we will be able to communicate clearly and easier to understand. And number three is by understanding the tools, we will know better what are the tools and mean to make language learning easier and easier to understand. Number four is by understanding the power of question and answer, we will more easily get information from other people with different perspective. And the last is by understanding talking to colleges will have a positive impact on communicating with colleges. So and the weakness is if you don't know the limits of strengths and language, one will become arrogant and feel the highest self. And number two is when the language with parents is understood but not used properly, it will cause a lot of miscommunication with parents because they don't understand what it means. Number three is if you don't understand transferring tools, then the learning tool provided will be useless because of the laziness of people. Number four is the power of debriefing will not be useful if those who are asked cannot respond to what will be done. And number five, if you understand talking to colleges but are not used it properly, It will cause that person to be thought of as cool person. And now, is the book effective for certain readers? Of course, this book is very effective for readers because it increases literacy in speaking and thinking, and also very effective for everyday life. Thank you. Maybe that's all, everyone. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.